Hi everyone, today I'm going to do something different. I'm going to show you how I created this screen print. Hope you enjoy the video. So this picture started off as just a bowl of fruit I had in my house, and I took a photo of it and I modified it to create a really simple image. And the reason why I wanted to do it, because I wanted to have a pop arty sort of effect and use very small amount of colors. So here I'm using red, I'm using orange, yellow, umber, and a very diluted umber to create a shadow here. I was very lucky to do this workshop at Kerwent Study Centre, print workshop, and I have filmed as much of it as I could. I couldn't film the photo emulsion process and some of the bits, but I have managed to film the whole process of printing, which hopefully will help you if you want to do some screen printing. I have done part of the screen print using stencils and part of it using photo emulsion. The photo emulsion bits were done for smaller parts of my design, which included these shadows and all the brown areas. The rest, the big blocks of colour, have been used doing using stencils made out of newsprint. So I had a stencil just for this red area, and all of this was red, so it was quite a big area using those two parts. Then I had a stencil for the orange part, and then I had a stencil for the yellow bit. Once I printed those, I added I had a screen which using photo emulsion I exposed to create all the brown areas, because they were so intricate and small that it would have been difficult to do it using stencils. Using stencils. And I also used photo emulsion just to create those little shadows here and here. The shadow colour, I wanted to be very transparent, so I used a tiny bit of ink with a huge amount of acrylic medium. So I would say 90% was acrylic medium for this see-through shadow. Otherwise, I've mixed the inks as 50-50 with ink and acrylic medium. So I hope you enjoy the video and the printing process, and I will try to explain as it goes along every step of the way, and I hope it will help you. If you have any questions, fire away, and I'm always happy to help out. Enjoy the video. So I've got my screen here pre-prepared with aperture made out of photo emulsion, as well as brown tape all around it to make sure that the ink doesn't get in. And my design is here, blocked out with newsprint, and also blocking out everything but the red. So what I want is just to print, the first colour I'm going to print is red, and I'm blocking everything out. So here I'm just dipping my ink with the squeegee, running through it once to make sure the newsprint stencil gets stuck to the screen, which it does. But it always needs sort of taping up a little bit, as you can see I'm doing here in corners, with a bit of masking tape just to make sure it doesn't fall off. My red is now printed onto my registration sheet, which is made out of acetate. I'm also, after every stroke, I'm flooding the screen and the flooding is necessary in order to wet the screen so it doesn't dry out too quickly. And my stencil is stuck to the screen, and I've got my registration sheet made out of acetate, which is stuck to the bottom of the screen. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to test out my stencils. I just want to see how it's going to print. And I'm just testing it out on a bit of old newsprint. And really the first couple of print runs can always be a bit dodgy. It's always good to print them on a newsprint. They can sometimes come out pretty well, but just to make sure that the stencil is working well, I'm going to run through and then propping it up with a wooden block and flooding it just to make sure my screen doesn't dry out. And just gonna check what the newsprint, just getting a bit of excess ink off the squeegee. Spatula, cooking spatula is very useful for that. And as you can see, it's worked out really well. The stencil worked really well. I'm quite happy with that. I have actually done a couple of more newsprint runs before I printed on a paper, but here is my paper, and I'm using registration sheet just to make sure that my first colour aligns really well in the middle of the paper. So I'm going to now put a bit of masking tape. So I'm going to align, I'm going to do 10 prints, so I'm going to make sure my paper aligns exactly where the first paper came. So I'm just putting a bit of masking tape in a corner here on the bottom right, and I'm also going to do it on top left. So I can print in exactly the same place on all of my 10 prints. There we go. It's very useful to have that registration. That registration won't really apply to following colours because I will actually use my acetate registration sheet for that, but it's useful for the first colour, to get the first colour in the right place. So as you can see, I'm ready to go. Just to add, at the bottom of the screen I have put a bit of lino in all 4 corners just to make sure the screen is just a little bit off the board and it's not quite touching the paper when I put it down. So when I run a squeegee through, it should then make a contact with paper, but not before. So I'm just picking up my squeegee here, and as I press down, it will then make contact with the paper and I will run the ink through. There we go. And I'm going to lift it up a little bit here, put a wooden block underneath, scrape off a bit of excess ink like that. I prefer to do that because it's best way to sort of very economically use the ink and not let it drip after I take the squeegee off. Flood it. It's always good to check if your sheet hasn't got stuck to the bottom of the screen before you flood it, because you end up overprinting. There we go, and the first sheet looks pretty good to me. I'm quite happy with this. So I have gone ahead and done 10 of those, as I wanted to have 10 copies of the print. So after I was happy with all my prints, I've cleaned the red ink off my screen. Mr. Muscle is the best. And here I'm going to use my yellow stencil, my yellow color, just to show my bananas. So I'm going to add some pre-mixed yellow ink that I mixed a little bit of yellow with a little bit of red, just so it's not so garish yellow. and I'm using a stencil here, so I want the stencil to stick to my screen. So this first stroke, we'll make sure that it happens, and as you can see, it has stuck. And I'm just going to lift the screen, and just like last time, as you can see, in all four corners I've got bits of lino, just to make sure that the screen doesn't quite touch the surface. And here I'm just securing my stencil so it doesn't flap about. Sometimes if the screen is a little bit damp, it can be difficult, so it's best to have it secured in several places just in case. So as you can see, the stencil has crimpled a little bit, but that's okay. It doesn't matter too much. Obviously, you can't, with stencils, you can't do too many prints. So the life of the stencil is limited unless you do several stencils to do the same color. But for this purpose is fine. I just want 10 prints anyway. So here we go. That's all secure. And good to go. Oh, one last for good luck. And putting the screen down. So as well as getting my stencil stuck to the screen, I have also forgot to mention that I've created a yellow registration on my acetate, which will now help me align the bananas correctly against the background. But first of all, of course, always do your first print on a newsprint just to test it out. Here I'm just having a go. I'm using a smaller squeegee because it's a smaller print area. So as you can see here, the newsprint got stuck to the screen, which I've just detached, and I'm just scraping off a bit extra. I've flooded the screen, and as you can see, it's pretty good. The stencil worked really well. I'm happy with this. I have done 3 or 4 more tests, but here I'm just testing it out with my registration. This is why it's so good to have this registration sheet. Absolutely essential to get my image lined up. My bananas will be here, and it takes a bit of time to get it right, but it's so useful. And now I'm ready to run the ink through with my squeegee. Just gathering my ink, and here we go. And just putting my wooden block underneath. That worked out pretty well. Really happy with that. And that wooden block underneath, and I'm just flooding the screen quickly, as always. Very important. And just getting the excess off my ink. So after this, I'm going to create 9 more, which obviously I'm not going to bore you with, but happy with the stencil and the registration. It's all working out well. So now I'm washing my screen and I'm ready for the oranges. So this is my stencil for the oranges, which I cut out against my design, and I'm just about to run my orange ink through just to make sure I get my stencil stuck firmly to the screen, as well as getting my registration sheet printed on to be able to align my image when I print the actual sheet. So I've mixed up a bit of yellow with some red, and I got a 50% mix with acrylic media, just to get a really good consistency of the ink, so it's loose. It's very important for the ink to be loose enough, because if it's sticky, you'll have lots of problems with the paper getting stuck to the screen and ink not really distributing properly. So the consistency of the ink is very important. So I'm drawing my ink through, and as before, I've got my registration acetate sheets printed on, and of course I need to secure my stencil with a bit of masking tape, just like before, securing it on all corners. The bigger the area the stencil has, the more difficult it is to print. So actually the bananas and oranges were a lot easier than doing the big red background. But I was very lucky and actually did work out with the red. I didn't run into many issues. So I was quite happy with that, despite the big area to print. So here we are, almost ready. And as before, of course, I'm going to test it out on a bit of newsprint first, just to make sure that is okay. And here, as you can see, I forgot to flood it, which was very naughty. We really don't want that screen to dry out. So here I'm just covering up the excess ink and getting it distributed evenly, dabbing the squeegee in the ink. And here we go. There's my first stroke. And that looks pretty good to me. I'm just flooding it again. And that looks pretty good. It doesn't always. A lot of the time, the first few prints can be the colours not very even. I'm just showing you my best ones. But yeah, there were a few that were not quite clear. So the first few prints are always a bit dodgy. So here I'm ready to add my third colour. So the registration sheet goes in. I have aligned it, and here we go. When you press down with a squeegee, it's important that the squeegee is not bent. It should be straight, and it should make a noise quite a loud noise against the screen. That's how you know you're doing it right. If you press too hard, the ink is pushed through a little bit too much, so the pressure should be just right. So here we go. That's pretty good. I've got a bit of white around, but it's actually part of the design, so I'm not really fussed about this. I'm quite happy with the result. So I've got my three colours now, and I've only got two left. I've got my bananas and my umber left. So I'm going to do umber first. So I'm going to block out the bananas, because I used one screen to expose both colours. I'm just going to block out the banana shadows, so I can freely run the ink through the screen and not get the ink onto the paper through the exposed bits of the screen. So actually printing with the photo emulsion exposed screen is a lot easier than doing stencil. I I found a lot quicker, so I can see the attraction of using photo emulsion versus stenciling. It's a much more durable printing process. So once I've got all my areas covered, and it's really important with tape, when you tape up the edges of the screen, to have it running all up onto the screen edges, so you don't get any ink trapped. As you will be washing in between different colors, you could get water and ink trapped into the corners that are exposed. So it's always really good to spend a bit of time taping up with parcel tape all the edges and corners to have it all secured. So here I'm happy with my exposed bit of screen. So I've added some Umber ink that I've mixed earlier, and I don't need to attach a stencil like I did before. It's all very straightforward. I'm printing straight onto my registration sheet, and then giving it a little flat stroke as always. And I'm just going to now have a test run on a newsprint and just see what the color looks like. I've now realized that the color's probably a bit lighter than I would like it to be. So here we go. I'm having a little test run on my newsprint. There we go. And yes, it is a bit too light. So what I've decided to do, instead of cleaning my screen because I was running out of time, I've actually just added, I'm just going to add a bit of much darkened version of this color, which will mean that my inks will mix a little bit, but it's okay. I don't mind it. It could be part of the design. I was just running out of my allotted time to be in a studio, so I just rushed it a little bit. Kind of mixed both inks a bit here on the screen, but it's fine. It will work out. I'm going to do a little test run anyway on a newsprint first. So the first couple of prints will probably print still with much lighter brown, but the later version will get darker and darker until I get my much darker umber. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use one of the old bits of newsprint that I used to print my red background, just to test out how that dark amber is going to play out against it. So just giving it a quick go here, and as always flooding it with a wooden block under the screen. And the first run will probably be a lot lighter than the following runs. So yeah, it's still a bit too light, but I'm not too worried, as probably the next stroke will be a lot darker. So here we go. I'm just having a quick look again. And hopefully this time the colour will be a little bit closer to what I'm actually looking for. So I can now finally take my prints and print them on the real thing. So here we go. Yep, this is looking a little bit, yeah, this is what I was looking for. As you can see, I can still see a little bit of lighter brown there, but it's quite nice actually. I don't mind it too much. So putting down my registration sheet, as always, making sure everything's aligned as it should be. And once I'm happy with the way it's aligned, I can take the acetate registration sheet off and gather up my ink and print. Here we go, just a quick flutter stroke as always. And an exciting part to see how my fourth, but not the last colour, is going to look. Oh, it's looking pretty good. I'm happy with this. So time for 10 more and then my screen will be cleaned. And here I'm already showing you the shady part, the shade. I've already taped off the other part of the design. So this is my very, very diluted ink, 10% ink, 90% medium, acrylic medium. So it's really see-through, very transparent, with just that tiny little bit of umber in it. And what I'm hoping is that when I print on yellow, bananas and oranges, it will show through and be quite translucent. So this is now printing on my registration sheet, ready for my final color. And this is the exciting part. This is where your entire design you've worked for will come to life. So I've obviously done a couple of test runs on newsprint, but here I'm just aligning the shadow in a correct position. You have to take my word for it because I'm unfortunately obscuring the camera. Terrible filming on my part. My apologies. But as you can see, it doesn't matter how you've got the registration sheet. It could be upside down. Wherever it is, it doesn't matter. But because you've got a registration sheet, it will be in exactly the right place. So here we are. This is the very last colour and the most exciting moment of the entire laborious process, which makes it all so worthwhile. And I think it looks great. I was so pleased with it. I was really worried it wasn't going to work out, but it really has. It worked really well. And I've got 10 of those prints. So here we are. This is the final product. So pleased with it. I really hope you enjoyed watching this and that you will create your own screen prints. Take care. Happy printing.